Hello, my name is Catherine Morea, and I live in beautiful Puerto Rico. I had lived in California before all my life, and in November of 2020, I moved myself and whatever stuff I decided to bring with me to Puerto Rico and started a new life here in Puerto Rico. I'm a licensed real estate agent in California, and I'm getting licensed in Puerto Rico. I found after being here for a couple months, there was a really wonderful market for investing. And I put together this PowerPoint to share some of the points about why I think Puerto Rico is a great place to invest. So I'm going to share my screen and get this started here. So why Puerto Rico? So Puerto Rico is a US territory and it is a tropical paradise. It's really beautifully stunning. It's just 1,000 miles from Miami. It's a 2.5-hour flight. It has the only US tropical rainforest. And it has 3 of the world's 5 bioluminescent bays, year-round bioluminescent bays. And San Juan is also the oldest city in the US. Puerto Rico is America. You have access to the federal courts, and all Puerto Ricans are US citizens. And you have the very same title and property rights as in the mainland. Of course, the currency is the US dollar. You do not need a passport to travel to Puerto Rico if you're from the mainland. And there's a military presence on the island. One thing I really love is that the cars drive on the same side of the road as in the US mainland. I've been all over the Caribbean and many of the islands, the cars drive on the opposite side of the road from the way US people drive. And I've also traveled in Europe and you know, being in a place where the cars drive the same way, even though there's a very foreign feel about Puerto Rico in many ways, but that is very comforting. Also, the chain stores that you are used to in the States. Walmart, IKEA, Rite Aid, Home Depot, Costco, a ton of restaurant chains. You're going to find them all over Puerto Rico. So the things you're comfortable with, you will be comforted in finding those available to you. Now, Puerto Rico is a US tax haven. There are many, many tax incentives on the island, but 2 of the most popular were Act 20 and Act 22. They've now been absorbed into Act 60. Act 20 was for companies bringing their company over to Puerto Rico. So they are exporting goods or services outside of Puerto Rico. And for that, they get a flat 4% corporate tax. Now there's the Individual Investor Act that you get no tax on capital gains, interest, and dividends. You do need to donate to a charity each year. And there's some other details, but just so you know, you could have taxes as low as 0 or 4% by moving yourself or your business to Puerto Rico. Now I want to talk about the tourism industry because in the Caribbean, the average percent for GDP is about 15%. And in the Bahamas, it's fully 60%. And yet Puerto Rico, only 7% of their GDP, actually a little less than 7%, is based on tourism. To me, that means there's a lot of room for growth. As we become more competitive in Puerto Rico with the other Caribbean islands, we can increase the amount of dollars in Puerto Rico that are coming from tourism. And then I like to make a little comparison with Hawaii, which is another beautiful tropical place that people from the US go on vacation. Now, the population of Hawaii is about half of what it is in Puerto Rico, and the distance to the mainland, it's actually much further away. So Hawaii is 2,400 miles away and Puerto Rico is only 1,100 miles away. So less than half as far to go. And the flight time is less than half. So you only have a 2.5-hour flight to go to Puerto Rico. You have at least 5 hours to go to Hawaii. And then the percent of tourism for the GDP. So Puerto Rico, as I mentioned, is 7%. Hawaii gets 21% of their GDP is coming from tourism. So again, a lot of room to grow, and we have not even tapped into the amount of tourism dollars that could be being made in Puerto Rico. The number of hotel rooms. Hawaii has 57,000 hotel rooms. Puerto Rico has just 14,000. They are desperately in need of hotel rooms as well as housing. There's a big housing shortage since Hurricane Maria several years ago. For hospitality, there's a tax credit that was called Act 74. It's now also part of Act 60, but the tourism tax credit allows qualifying projects to get either 30 or 40% back of their total investment by getting a tax credit. And those are Puerto Rican tax credits, but you can sell those. Last I heard it was about 90 to 92 cents on the dollar. So that's a great way to get capital back in your pocket in year 1 or 2 of your project if it qualifies. And you do need to have 7 rooms. If you're a guest house or a small inn or boutique hotel, you do need to have 7 rooms. And there's a website listed here of where you can get more information about that. I wanted to say, take your money where it will appreciate and be appreciated. Now there's also some other wonderful tax incentive here in Puerto Rico, and that's an opportunity zone. And Puerto Rico is 98% opportunity zone. Now, a lot of times opportunity zone exists in depressed areas, areas that suffer financially, economically. And so those areas have been outlined as being attractive to investors by getting certain tax breaks. And Puerto Rico, the almost entire island, is an opportunity zone. And what that means is you can own beachfront property in an opportunity zone. Now, I think an opportunity zone, it's different, but in many ways better than a 1031 exchange. You get to defer your capital gains, not forever, but for 5 years. You get to defer your capital gains, but the growth of that asset is 100% tax-free. So when you sell it, you do need to do like a 10-year hold, but when you sell it at the end of 10 years, you have tax-free capital gains growth. And there's no depreciation recapture. Now, this is really important if you have investment property and you're taking depreciation as an expense each year off your taxes. It's reducing your tax bill. That's great. And then if you ever go and sell that asset, now you've got to recapture all that depreciation and pay the tax bill. And so what happens with an opportunity zone is there is no depreciation recapture tax. You also get a 10% step up in basis. So that's also really helpful in lowering the amount of tax that you have. So an opportunity zone project is really something to look into here in Puerto Rico. Everywhere you turn, it's an opportunity zone. Now, short-term rentals. Many cities in the mainland have banned short-term rentals. I come from Los Angeles and Santa Monica, and they severely restricted what kind of property and how many units and how many days you can rent an Airbnb if you're even allowed to rent a whole home or just a room. Puerto Rico is much more tourism friendly. They charge just a 7% short-term rental tax. You don't need a license, you need an innkeeper ID. And last year in August, a new law was passed making it illegal for a homeowner association to ban short-term rentals. Now, of course, if it's in the bylaws expressly prohibited, then they can still do that, and many of them do. But it was nice to see that they're passing laws to try to make it okay to do Airbnb and short-term rentals. I just wanted to show something that I've been working on. This is a 4-unit building. It's in Santurce. It's close to La Placita. They're asking $555,000. I'm working on this deal with a partner at 20% down, $110,000 down, and ideally we will get a nice long-term low interest rate loan because this is 1 to 4 units. It qualifies as residential, and if we get a 3.5% loan, for instance, the rate will be about, the payment will be about $19.76 a month. We think the average daily rate on these units, which are 2+1, will be about $150. And just for a quick calculation, I took 20 nights. So assuming that 10 nights a month were just not occupied, we would still be getting $12,000 a month gross on this project. Of course, we have to take into account expenses, supplies, insurance, housekeeping, et cetera. But that gives you sort of a sample of the kind of numbers I'm looking at here in the San Juan area. And I am looking for credit and equity partners. This is my information. I am running a group here in Puerto Rico called REIA Rico. That's the Real Estate Investors Association of Puerto Rico. I started this with my son about 6 months ago. We wanted to have a place where investors could meet, network, share resources, share deals, get ideas, get inspired. And so we meet on the fourth Wednesday of every month. I hope if you're in town, you'll come visit us and reach out to me if you're interested in investing in Puerto Rico. All right, that's it. Thank you very much.